Hey everyone, Felix from Nintendo Life here, and I'm gonna learn today to talk about this supposedly Switch 2 Joy-Con. I'm joined by Mr. Alex.
Hello!
So Alex, recently there's been some images surfacing around the internet, and we thought it was finally time to just talk about it because there's been a lot.
Yeah, there's been a lot of images flying around for a while, and we haven't directly addressed them for a number of reasons. We try and avoid rumors and things like that, and supposed leaks, but it's reached the point where it sort of feels like we need to address it, and this most recent image appears to be one of the most final of all the ones that we've seen thus far. We aren't able to show the image to you, unfortunately, because we don't have the rights to the image, but I have managed to knock up a little recreation, which, if anyone's wondering, no, I'm afraid I'm not available for commissions.
No!
I'm inundated with requests. I know. Yeah. The wobbly lines are a trademark of mine.
It does add some charm, but no, I think you've captured perfectly what the images show, and there's some interesting tidbits. Mainly, well, let's get the obvious out of the way. We can see that the SL and SR triggers are significantly bigger, and there's also something on the back. Supposedly, the new Joy-Con have magnets. It doesn't like go on rails. You'll just snap them in. That sounds really cool. But the most interesting thing is here in the middle. You see a little sensor here.
Yeah.
Zoomed in, so you all know what I'm talking about.
This is the thing that made me decide, okay, let's talk about it, Felix, because I'm always reluctant to do these things. Yes, this is now in previous sort of images that people have quote-unquote leaked, and I'd like to reiterate once again, none of this is final, none of this is confirmed, this is still purely speculative. However, this hasn't been in any of the previous images. This has just been a hole, and now it's populated. And in the original image, I've done my best to recreate it here, it appears to be an optical sensor like you'd get on the bottom of a mouse.
Yes, and that's... I saw a post on Reddit, which a person was using the Joy-Con, like flipping it upside down. I have some footage of me doing it as well, and using it as a mouse. Now, I've never thought even the possibility of doing that, but it works surprisingly well. It was one of those things like, of course they're gonna do that. Of course, they're now not gonna do that because it's too obvious. But it's so cool. Like, suddenly you can have games like, Mario Maker would make so much sense for that, where you can just use the mouse, or even for Splatoon. So you don't, I really like that you use the controller, but I imagine some people don't. So, and point and clicks. A lot of games will be so much easier to port over because you don't have to make a controller configuration. So, if that's what it is, I'll be well up for that. What do you think of this?
Honestly, it's not something I ever would have predicted. But it's actually really exciting, and not because, sort of, oh, now I can play my first-person shooters with a mouse. I'm not really bothered by that. It's a perfectly fine way to control, but I do actually prefer motion aiming. I find it more relaxing to just lay back in a chair and just, I'm not some super twitchy FPS gamer, although I do love Doom. But what's exciting is that this is, also still speculative. There's nothing to say that there won't be a sensor in both Joy-Con, which means dual mouse, which, as an input method, I'm sure it's been done at some point. But imagine what you could do with two mice as an input.
You can have co-op games then, like co-op point and click, where, I've never even thought of that. Because normally it's like, I've played games like, there was this game where you played as tanks, and one person would use WASD, and another person would use the... God,
IJKL, or sometimes it was like,
I know what it's called in Danish, piletasterne, the arrow keys, of course.
The arrow keys, yeah.
And then the last person would use the mouse, where the person who used the mouse had a massive advantage. So, but no, I would love to see, I don't know how that would work. You can be two people browsing the eShop with a mouse. That would be nice.
That would be nice, if it was more responsive.
Yeah, very true. But another thing that's also been speculated is that this is going to act like an IR sensor, essentially like the Wii. So we'll have more precise motion, like aiming, because maybe then there'll be something in the dock, or you can just have a little bar just like the Wii did. And then, well, you can either put it in a grip and then they can kind of reflect it. I can try my best and show it with arrows.
Within the rail, you mean? So it acts a bit like a Wii remote. Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
worry,
exactly.
I've done a little mock-up of that as well.
Oh, great.
I just haven't yet sent you the image.
But also, just if you can also flip it on its side and it still works. So maybe we'll get Wii games like properly, and we don't have to reset every time. Oh yeah, that's a good image. Thank you, Alex. Exactly.
It's very basic, but it gets the point across.
Yeah.
I think that this is probably the more likely. I mean, there's nothing to say that it couldn't be both. You know, this could be both easily. But what I think is more likely, rather than a pointer with an IR sensor or anything like that, just because of what little I know of optical mice, you don't need that sort of thing. And the sensor really, really looks like an optical sensor from a mouse. You don't need something, you just need a surface to sort of see, quote unquote, see. So I'm hoping that instead of it being more like a sort of a passive sensor that's looking for the 2 infrared LEDs that you get on like the Wii sensor bar, which would require another accessory, I'm really hoping that this is instead just something that can read the wall, as it were, or whatever you're pointing at, whether it's using lasers or what, but it sends and send and receive, and it can see things, and it doesn't need those infrared sensors. So it is just, you can point it anywhere and it knows exactly where it's looking. And maybe coupled with the motion, sort of gyro and the accelerometer and everything, it gets enough data to be like, I know where I am in space. That would be really exciting. Like a Wii remote that doesn't need a sensor bar, but is properly accurate. That's so exciting.
It is really exciting. Oh, wow, my voice.
Again, this is still speculative.
Yes, it is. I would love for it to be both. It's just, when I saw a lot of the leaks, I was like, okay, we're getting just another Switch, and cool. But it didn't seem that. It just seems like the same thing, but better, which is what a lot of people want. But having some sort of gimmick is always very fun. Even though it might not get used, it's what makes Nintendo. They always try to, they make a gimmick and suddenly, wow, everyone else realizes that it's a great gimmick. And then, okay, we gotta hop on that trend like we saw with the Wii. Everyone wanted a piece of the cake. So maybe they have reinvented it. That's why they took so long. They were like, okay, we need to figure out something. Ah, yes, mice.
Honestly, it sounds silly to say it out loud. That could actually be, if this is the case, of course. But if this is the case, it honestly probably was something like that. It's just sort of like, well, why can't we just put a sensor in the bottom of the Joy-Con like a mouse, and they go, huh, that's not a bad idea. And it just goes from there. It's by no means impossible. This is the sort of, and it's a very Nintendo idea as well, not because Nintendo loves mice or anything like that, but because it's taking existing, well-established technology that is cheap, straightforward, easy to implement, and it's using it in an interesting and different way. And that is basically Nintendo in a nutshell when it comes to all their innovation. It's not about, like cutting edge technology or anything like that. It's taking something new, taking something old and established and, sort of well understood, straightforward. They know it through and through, and going, hey, what if we used it in a wacky way? But I do want to reiterate that not just that this is speculative, I've done that enough, but also we don't actually know anything about the console, all things considered. We have, sort of rumors and speculation, we have ideas, we have images and things like that, but at the end of the day, nothing is real until Nintendo reveals it. We don't know the power of the system, and yes, there's been things like shipping documents that show that it's likely to be using a certain chipset and stuff like that, but we don't know how Nintendo is going to apply that if indeed it is the case. We don't know anything yet for absolute certain. We don't know that there are going to be magnetic rails for the Joy-Con. We don't know that it's even going to be a Switch. I mean that is, we all but know that it's going to be another Switch because they'd be mad not to. And it does seem very likely that what we're looking at is going to be close to reality. But once again, nothing is confirmed until Nintendo confirms it. Just want to be clear about that.
It would be very funny if all the leaks are false. There was like one initial leak and people just went with it and made mock-ups and just one big hoax. But anyway.
Honestly, it would be so... I mean, I don't want that to necessarily be the case because a lot of people get very annoyed at Nintendo because that's how some people's minds work. But it would be very funny if none of this was real.
But anyway, what do you all think watching along? Do you think this is real? Is it fake? What do you think could be the new gimmick of the next thing? Well, let us know down in the comments below. And also don't forget to check out our website, nintendolife.com, for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. If you enjoyed this video, why don't you point that IR sensor at the subscribe button and give it a little click too. Stay safe, play some games on your Switch while you still can, and we'll see you in the next one. Felix and Alex from Nintendo Life, out.
Nintendo Switch Mises.